You're on the road beyond. Welcome. I'm Todd Duplantis. Good to have you with us on the show today. We are coming to you from the HCC TV studios in Houston, Texas. My co-host, Doug O'Brien.
Yep, good to be here. Don't forget to like, follow, and share. You can also subscribe to our channel on YouTube, and you can find us everywhere absolutely free because we work cheap at the Road Beyond podcast.
We usually have a pretty light show where we give you some intriguing subjects, but keep it on a light note. Today is going to be a dark one. Just want to warn you. The end of the show, a little bit different. Today is going to be a dark one. We have some somber news to start with today. Now, by now, many of you in the paranormal and metaphysical communities have heard the news of Dan Rivera, a veteran investigator with the New England Society for Psychic Research. He passed away on July 13th in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania.
He was just 54 years old, and he had been on the Devils on the Run tour, traveling across the country with the real Annabelle doll. And that's kind of what made this really get into the news. And yes, it is that Annabelle from the Warren Occult Museum collection.
That's right. The original Raggedy Ann doll, made infamous by Ed and Lorraine Warren, and of course made into legend by Hollywood. Dan wasn't just escorting a haunted relic. He was educating people on the history behind it. His work wasn't about jumping scares or viral videos. It was about context, clarity, and caution.
But of course, as the headlines dropped, so did the sensationalism. It was crazy. The New York Post ran with the story, "Paranormal investigator dies while touring with haunted Annabelle doll." And social media, well, it took off like wildfire.
Yeah, the rumor mill exploded. Demonic possession, cursed objects, spiritual retaliation, you name it. People wanted to believe it. The doll did it. Because let's face it, truth doesn't always trend, right? But fantasy does.
But here's what we know, all right? Here are the facts. According to authorities, Dan passed away in his sleep at his hotel room in Gettysburg. And the information I heard is that he wasn't feeling well earlier in the evening. He went back to his hotel just to lay down and rest. There were no signs of foul play, no signs of anything paranormal at all. Emergency crews did respond, and they did perform CPR, but unfortunately it was too late.
Now, here's something we want to read from someone who knew Dan personally, author and researcher Larry Flaxman, who's also been on this show. He posted this on Facebook, and it really cuts through the noise. Flaxman said, quote, "Paranormal investigator Dan Rivera, 54, died July 13th, 2025 in Gettysburg hotel room. Authorities made it clear there was nothing suspicious, no signs of foul play, no strange activity, no demonic energy, just a tragic, likely health-related incident. Dan had over 10 years with the New England Society for Psychic Research. He worked to educate, not scare. Yes, the movies are fun, but in real life, Annabelle is just a doll. Dan was a real man with a real family who deserves better than cheap Facebook ghost gossip." And that's from Larry Flaxman, author and paranormal researcher.
It's pretty powerful. And when this first came out, you and I talked about how we kind of wanted to approach it. It's very timely. Sometimes the real danger isn't what's locked behind the glass. It's the stories, of course, that we let run wild. We have to be careful with that.
Yeah, Dan spent years walking into places many of us were afraid to go. Haunted homes, spirits plagued battlefields, locations soaked in lore and legend. But he didn't go in for theatrics. He went in with science, with humility and compassion.
He believed that if something unexplained was happening, it deserved careful observation, not viral fear-mongering.
And let's not forget, Dan's own journey began because he had experienced things he couldn't explain. That's what drew him to the Warrens' legacy. He wasn't some fame seeker. He was a family man, a quiet force, a researcher, and most of all, a storyteller.
And of course, the irony is not lost on us. He dies during a tour with one of the most famous haunted dolls and objects in the world, and now people are rewriting the ending.
But truth is, Dan's story doesn't need rewriting. It needs remembering and, most of all, respect.
Exactly. And so to those of you listening, especially our fellow explorers out there of the strange, the sacred, and the shadow, just take a moment and ask yourself, are you sharing the mystery or are you distorting it?
Because at the Road Beyond podcast, we believe the paranormal is worth exploring, but never at the expense of truth or someone's legacy.
Absolutely. Rest in peace, Dan Rivera, and thank you for reminding us that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is seek out the truth in the dark. And honestly, Dan is no different than us and others. I mean, the very reason he got into this whole business is the same reason we did, because
curiosity and
we're
truth.
curious, right? We've seen things we can't explain. And when it first came out, of course, it was sensational. I contacted you and it's like, hey, you know, what do we do here?
Right.
So,
and I thought Larry's post on Facebook, in fact, I messaged him last week. I said, look, is it okay to use your post? And he said, absolutely.
Good.
He's going to be a guest on the show in the next few weeks. We're going to get him on. I had seen videos of Dan Rivera, really a few weeks before this. They'd been circulating on X of just weird things that were happening with the Annabelle dolls.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, of course, when he passed, we started seeing these articles coming forth right and left. You'd see one of them pop up and people were already starting to cross that line. But the reality is he was a man, a family man, and he deserves that respect.
Also, just a reminder to all of us that are probably over 50, get checked out, go to a doctor, not everything. There is such thing as normal.
Yeah.
This was normal. This was not paranormal.
Right.
And that's something for all of us to keep in mind without a doubt.
It's hard to grasp, especially if you are in the situation when you have somebody 54 years old is relatively young.
Absolutely.
But you have to get checked if anything.
Absolutely. The doll, of course, whether you believe in it or not, it is a lot of fun to talk about.
Yeah.
I think we've all seen videos. I watched one where they transferred it.
And they had
one case to another. And there was a little situation.
That's the one that came out not long, right there.
Yeah.
Not long before.
Yeah, that was it. It definitely gets your attention. But we have to remember that Dan, just like us, just like you, just regular guys, just interested in the paranormal.
We're getting the word out there. Okay, we're going to shift subjects, but still another dark one. One of them, if you lived in Houston, especially the Houston Heights, you may remember this next story. We're going to have an author who talks about the case of Dean Corll coming up.
Absolutely. The Candyman will be right after this.
I'm learning healthcare management while providing patient care.
I came back to grow my skills, even after I graduated.
And if I can't make it in person, I take my classes online.
I think it's just vapor with flavor.
It won't hurt my kid like cigarettes, right?
Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
My kid?
My kid knows it's dangerous.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
It's hard to imagine that this powerful, beautiful animal needs our help. But they are being killed for their skin and bones, and their homes are being destroyed. Tigers are at the heart of so many delicate ecosystems. When you protect a tiger, you also protect thousands of species and people that rely on the same habitat. Learn how you can make a difference.
Dear Santa, my mom says I'm a good helper, but you didn't come last year. I just really hope this year when I wake up, I'm gonna see that you came to my house too.
Donate today.
Welcome back to the Road Beyond podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien along with Todd Duplantis. Don't forget to like, follow, and share. We are on all the social media sites at the Road Beyond podcast.
We're going to take a bit of a shift in subjects now, from the unexplained to the tragically ignored, a story not of ghosts, but of real lives in the shadows.
Imagine Houston, Texas, 1970s. We are the city of the future at that point. NASA, industry, innovation, but beneath all that glimmering hope and promise was something unspoken and something horrific.
Now, more than 24 teenage boys went missing. For years, their stories were just simply dismissed. Runaways, they said, draft dodgers, kids chasing drugs and countercultural dreams. But they weren't running away, they were being hunted.
Dean Corll is the man's name, nicknamed the Candyman. He operated right here in our very own backyard, luring young boys to their death, our very own serial killer. But it would take decades and a forensic anthropologist with a childhood memory and a journalist who refused to let the story go to bring those boys home.
Joining us now today is Lise Olsen. She's a veteran investigator, reporter, and author of The Scientist and the Serial Killer. Lise, welcome to the show. We appreciate you joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Todd. Nice to be here.
Your book not only uncovers just the crimes of Dean Corll, but the determination of a lady named Dr. Sharon Derrick, the scientist who worked to give the victims their name back. Maybe you can start off, Doug, and kind of get a description of what we're going into.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And let's start at the beginning with all this. What drew you to this case with Dean Corll first?
I didn't live in Houston in the 70s, but I moved here from Seattle, where we had a serial killer whose victims also had been unidentified, the Green River Killer. And I met Sharon Derrick and her colleagues, the forensic anthropologists, trying to sort of unravel this case in terms of who the victims were when I first moved here in the 2000s. And over the years, I saw her unlock identity after identity of these boys who had seemingly been forgotten of the serial killer case. And in the process, a lot of details about the case came to light that had never been known.
Now, how did you find out about the case? Now, I know you mentioned the Green River Killer, but how did you hear about the case here in Houston?
Well, I knew when I got here that Houston had a tremendous number, like over 300 unidentified dead people, and many of them were the victims of murderers, including serial killers. So I wanted to dive into that because I had reported on that in Seattle and how the Green River Killer had gotten away by identifying people who were then unidentified because there weren't resources to find out who they were. And this was a case that really stood out because out of a known 27 victims originally, almost a third of them were unidentified even in the 2000s, 40 years later. And this really shocked Dr. Derrick, who I met early, because she had family ties to the Heights neighborhood. She knew that many of the kids were from the Heights and some of those other neighborhoods nearby in Houston. And she was just shocked that over all those years, their identities had not been rediscovered and that their families were likely still waiting for answers.
Well, you know, what I found fascinating, we were just talking about this before we went on the air, but many of us here have lived in the Heights, down the street from where these murders happened or where the boys were buried. And the police at the time, I guess, which is the most disturbing, they were just simply labeling this as these boys were runaways. How did that mindset affect the investigation? And do you think something like this could happen today?
Well, of course, in the 70s, we didn't have computers, to track crimes. But, the patterns were pretty obvious. When the boys were found, when the bodies were found, they had been dumped in 3 sites by Dean Corll, in a rented boat shed, near his family cabin, and then on a beach. And when police figured out where some of those boys had lived, a number of them were neighbors of one of Corll's 2 teenage henchmen. They literally lived within blocks of Elmer Wayne Henley. Many of them had attended Hamilton Junior High School and were classmates of Henley and David Brooks, who was the other teenager involved in these crimes. And so it's kind of hard to believe that even in the 70s, these kind of patterns didn't jump out. And in fact, when the police identified some of these kids, one of the first things the HPD chief at the time said was there were no patterns. And that, of course, was incomprehensible even to people who were reading the newspapers at the time, because they could see from maps that these kids had lived just blocks away from the 2 identified accomplices, and others lived near other addresses where Dean Corll had lived. He had moved all over Houston, hopping every couple of months to different apartments and houses where he rented for short periods of time so that neighbors wouldn't ask too many questions about the parties and the bullets and the things that were happening wherever he lived.
Well, let's talk about Dr. Sharon Derrick for a moment. Her role in the story is a forensic detective meets quiet hero. Talk about her involvement. What inspired her to reopen this case? Take a look at it.
Well, she was assigned to look at that huge backlog of unidentified. And when she found these boxes that were just labeled mass murders 1973, she remembered these cases from her own teenage years. And so she really, dived into them early. She got the records, first of all, from the Harris County DA's office and began just sort of reading everything she could about them. She found that some boys who were never identified, there were just 1 or 2 page missing persons reports with just the barest minimum of details. And she started trying to find their relatives where they were 40 years later. So she was both doing forensic reexaminations of these boxes of bones, but also at the same time trying to find the families of missing persons who had been identified in the 70s, but who were never found. So she was doing both things at once. And she was really driven by this idea that it was outrageous that all these kids, basically from the same area, had never been identified.
And Lisa, as you mentioned, when you were working on this book, you spoke with families, experts, but you also spoke with survivors. What was there one moment or one interview that really struck you the hardest emotionally?
There are 2 interviews really that were very difficult. One was of a man whose brother was one of the first known murder victims. And he has an account of being invited by Dean Corll and another kid to ride with him in a car about a week before his brother was lured away to his death. And he describes Corll offering them beer, giving his brother his phone number. And there was just there wasn't any police questioning of the brother. They didn't pay attention to this story. And that was the second and third known victims. So if they paid attention to this 15-year-old kid in 1971, a lot of this might have been stopped 2 years earlier. The other kind of chilling story was 1969. In 69 in the Heights, a kid who went to the high school was chased by a man he identified as Dean Corll. He's a person with an incredible memory. He's got almost a photographic memory. And he recalled being chased by this man with a convertible. At the time, Dean Corll did own a convertible, through the streets and barely escaped with his life. And again, this is a case that suggests that Corll likely pursued and tried to kill other kids even earlier than the murder spree is known to have begun. So those are kind of the stories that I guess really stuck with me. And also the fact that there likely were lots of other kids who were attacked or threatened, whose stories were either dismissed or just not believed by police.
You know what I find fascinating about all this? The Heights now in Houston, Texas is, well, it's an upper class neighborhood.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's gentrified. It's grown, overgrown. Many will say, many of us miss the old Heights. I lived there in the 80s. I lived there in the early 2000s, 2 totally different times there. In the 80s, it was still very rough there.
Yeah.
You can only imagine 10, 15 years earlier, that was a part of town that you didn't want to be walking around at night in. So it was much different than it is right now.
That's absolutely true. And the kid who was walking home, he was walking home from work at, at an ice cream store. He was working, there was a working class neighborhood. Kids were working to help their parents pay their way through school and get their own clothes. And so he was walking out of necessity, but he knew, that neighborhood, there could be dicey things happen. He didn't expect to be chased by someone, though, through the streets in a car. He'd seen other things. And this was kind of the amazing thing, too, is, some of the other murders that Sharon worked on, there had been parents who had tried to put flyers up about their missing kids for years before these crimes were discovered. And some of those kids had gone missing right near where other kids lived. And of course, no one knew they had been murdered. But those kids, the connections between the kids were there. If anybody had been looking for them, they would have found them.
You mentioned the 2 accomplices. Was it Elmer Wayne Henley? Is that correct?
Yes, and David.
Okay, and he was the main one. What was their motivation in helping Dean Corll? What was their connection?
Well, David Brooks had been a shopper at the candy store when he was 10 years old. His grandmother lived near the candy store that Dean Corll ran with his mother. And he was a kid whose parents were divorced. He kind of was at loose ends. And later on, when his mom left Houston, he had become such close friends with Dean Corll that he started staying with Dean Corll and saw him as kind of a father figure. So today, we say, okay, this guy was groomed by Dean Corll. Over time, he starts to realize that kids are being killed by Corll, and Corll's asking him to dispose of the bodies. By this time, he's fairly brainwashed. He recruits his friend Henley to come and recruit other kids to the parties. Henley, unlike Brooks, becomes really much more involved, not just in inviting kids to parties, but in assisting in torturing and killing them. He comes to sort of like it. He's also a person who sees Corll as a weird role model. So there's something, these are kids who were vulnerable, but they certainly at some point feared for their own lives, but they were also very, very much influenced by this very, very violent and persuasive man, and who also, abused Brooks beginning when he was 10.
I mean, this is just
crazy.
If anything we learned from this, it seems like a story where society, the police department, and the city failed these young men, these boys, when they were being abducted.
Well, and especially back then, you didn't have
social media.
You didn't have social media. It was much harder to reach people, and it was so much easier to say, "Oh, they're runaways," or just unidentified. So,
and the other thing is there was a component of people weren't talking about child pornography. There weren't laws that protected teenage boys and girls the way there are now against abuse. A lot of those kinds of crimes were just dismissed if kids were teenagers and they were reported to have been sexually abused or photographed. Dean Corll worked with people who were photographing teen boys and selling their photos and videos. And so that was part of it too, is that just the whole society just was looking away from that and didn't want to know.
Well, Lise, we appreciate you joining us this afternoon in discussing this book. The book is called The Scientist and the Serial Killer. It's available now wherever books are sold. Thank you for joining us, Lise. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Okay, we're going to lighten things up a little bit, so stick around. We got Bare Necessities next.
I'm learning healthcare management while providing patient care.
I came back to grow my skills, even after I graduated.
And if I can't make it in person, I take my classes online.
3.
Charlie, you're gonna be
4.
late.
Charlie.
Huh?
Hey.
Hey, Invisinerd. Wait!
Slow at work.
We can't live like this.
Poison Help is a free 24/7 hotline that answers all of your poison questions in over 100 languages.
Hello? Poison Help?
Hello? When poison happens, we're here for you. Just call Poison Help, 1-800-222-1222.
Why is just a starting line, for the true self blooms only when we find our purpose, what makes us tick, below the surface. Our reason why is united, undivided, seeking understanding. My why is diversity and unity, a safe space in my community. It's a million faces in a mirror, and everyone belongs. Find your why for a better us.
It's so sad. It's not.
If you're buzzed and doing this to make yourself feel okay to drive, you're not okay to drive.
Welcome back to the Road Beyond podcast.
Okay, you've been through all the dark stuff. Let's have a little fun. Time for Bare Necessities. This first one is fun.
Yeah, this one, of course, Doug sent me these videos. I've seen this one before. What happens when you have a Tour de France and a horse decides to join in? Take a look at this. Horse is just watching his favorite cyclist going by, and
he gets inspired.
Yeah, I can do this too. So the horse jumps the fence. I believe this is a Tour de France. They're saying it is. It may or may not be. All we know, it doesn't appear to be AI, and I think this is the real thing.
He takes the lead.
He takes the lead. And now the news crews are following him, and he's just got the whole lead on these guys here. So there you go.
My question is, what are the rules in this case? Is it like in baseball where
did they give the horse a medal?
Yeah.
Did he decide to stop, or how did that work out?
He get to wear the yellow jersey for that day.
If you know what happened after this video, let us know in the comments.
Please,
We'd like to know.
I'm dying to know.
He's not going to be able to sleep tonight, I don't think.
They find these. This is what I do late at night. I find these weird.
And he sends them to me.
I do.
Okay, we've gone to Tour de France to on the water. What we've seen so far, dogs that mow the lawn.
Yes.
I don't buy.
But you do buy that they drive a car.
I do buy, and this one is plausible as well.
This is why I thought of you when I saw this.
Dog piloting a boat. And this is a dog. Yep.
When you've had too much to drink,
just let your dog take over.
You need to have a designated dog to drive.
Here's my problem with this one.
Okay.
Where does it go and how does it end? The guy is drinking. We got that. But we only see a clip. So the guy could have just put the boat on, cruise control. And the dog, it's not like the dog's steering the thing. He's sitting up there.
I have a bigger concern. Look at the back end of that boat. He is nearly underwater. What is going on
I don't
with the
think
motor?
At this point, he looks a little bit tanked.
Yeah, I don't think he cares,
I don't think
really.
he cares at this point.
I do think he let Fido just pilot him on in.
All right, this next video kind of speaks for itself. It involves a cow, a pickup truck, and well, take a look. I'm thinking this is AI. Let me know your thoughts. So you got a cow in the back of the pickup truck, just casually jumps on a scooter and takes off. Once again,
I don't know. It looks pretty realistic.
Looks realistic to me. Doesn't even start the scooter, just jumps in the scooter and the scooter.
I don't know how he shifts gears, or it looks like he's about to jump off there at the end.
Yeah.
He's just going for a joyride. But there's another one, and I've sent it to you.
We'll
try to get it on.
We'll get that one on.
Where it's another cow jumping on a moped and driving away.
Yeah.
I don't know what is going on with cows and mopeds, but they seem to love them.
You remember my monkey and AI cooking videos,
yes,
right?
I do,
Didn't buy
of course.
those, and I'm not sure if I'm buying anything a cow does involving two-wheel motorized bikes.
But yet you believe a dog driving a car.
I'm all good with that one.
Yeah.
I think they can.
Where is your barometer?
We have not
mind?
tapped into that business yet. Haven't done it.
I don't know. I can't find your middle ground. That's the thing. But you're
dog driving cars. I'm ready for mine to do that.
Right.
That's what I'd like. That wraps up today's show. Hopefully you've got a lot out of it. Next week, we do plan on lightening things up a bit. So stay tuned for that. And
yes, and always like, follow, share, subscribe. We are on all the social media sites. And Todd, you post things on X as well.
At Todd Duplantis 65. Yeah.
You can always find us at the Road Beyond podcast.
We'll see you next week.
Yeah.